the manifesto, the book of all books is called A New Earth, written by Eckhart Tolle. That's an absolute must read. You're just simply irresponsible if you haven't read that book yet. In 2019, you're just taking no responsibility for the generation you live in if you've missed that book. So just get it, and read it slowly. That one reads slowly. Couple pages, integrate. Couple pages, integrate, and just take it real slow. It should take you a year to read it. By the way, when you finish that one, then I recommend you read it again. And then again and again. I would suggest no less than 3 readings before you start another book, once you start that book. There is one caveat, though, is that I don't know how he managed to do this, because usually people that smart have some concept of Judaism. I don't know how it missed him, but this guy, he does not know his ass from his elbow when it comes to Judaism. I mean, he is completely clueless, and it's bizarre. I mean, it's just totally bizarre, because I've done a lot of reading, and usually when you get a mind like this, like they're usually like they got some of the foundational stuff inside. Not him. He missed that part. And so, if you're expecting anything Jewish, when I say Jewish, everything's Jewish in that book. But I'm talking about like being able to quote Judaism properly. He can't do it. And if anything, he'll quote JC, which you can put that in quotes. You can go like that. He will quote JC and then give it some Buddhist twist every time. Like, he'll quote JC and then give it a Buddhist twist every time. But I just simply skip those quotes. Yeah. Speaking of Christianity, I'm having this whole new thing with Christianity lately, and I think it's all Jordan Peterson's fault. And that is the I've always been outspoken. I've been always extremely outspoken, to a point where like I've tried to keep the subject out of my live feeds altogether, because I just don't want to get Christians angry. I mean, you saw what happened yesterday in El Paso, so like I just don't want Christians getting angry. And who knows, that guy was Christian anyway. But I just don't want to. I'm not here to upset Christians, and not to mention there's a billion of them. But I generally never had a nice thing to say in my entire career. But there is a but, and the but is that if I could just remove all the hell the Jews have been through, I am wondering if it wasn't for Christianity, might it have even been worse? Might it have even been worse? We know that in the atheistic, the whatever took place over there under Stalin and all the Marxist philosophies that led to political programs that wiped out some of the worst massacres in all of history, which those aren't known for like the way Christianity's known to wipe us out, but they really wiped out a lot of people. Jews were included in that often, and persecuted in that. But sometimes I wonder if I should take it easy a little bit on it. I'll take a vote. Who says I should still stay harsh and vengeful over the blood spilled of our brothers and sisters throughout Christian history? Who says I should be more gentle, given that it might have been even worse had it not been for some kind of a deistic moral virtue that Europe was, at least using as its foundations? Okay, all in favor, stay harsh. Raise your hands. All in favor is take it easy on the Christians. It was almost half and half. I don't know what to say. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave it up to my Christian viewers. I have a lot of... They're not Christian anymore. They've all dropped Christianity. Just by virtue of being my students on the live feed, they've all dropped their affiliation with Christianity, which Oprah did as well because of her relationship with Eckhart Tolle. But I would... I'll leave it up to them. So all my viewers who are not from Jewish mothers or converts to Judaism, all those viewers, please send in your votes and I will read them. And I think I'm adjusting. I just can't decide. I was out of school since I'm 11, so it's not like I really understand the historical perspective of what Christianity offered Western civilization such that it might have been much worse. Or I always saw it as a Jew, and for us it'd be like it would have been a lot better not to have, that kind of stuff going on. I mean, you realize what happened. I mean, there were Jews just living along the Rhine River alone in giant communities of scholarship and beauty and traditions straight from the temple, meaning straight from temple times. Communities lived along the Rhine that had the songs that were sung in the temple and traditions that were kept all the way down, not to mention massive amounts of scholarship. And on one Shabbos alone, the Christians came in and did not leave one man, woman, or child alive in whole Jewish cities. Speyer, Worms, Mainz. I mean, no one was left alive. Not to mention all the manuscripts that were burned. Everything was handwritten in those days. And it all happened on one Shabbos, which is where the word Black Sabbath comes from, is that it was the Black Sabbath. Not an appropriate name for a rock band, by the way. But what did they know? I mean, who's that, Alice Cooper or something? Yeah, I wonder if he was Jewish. I don't know. They didn't realize, obviously, what they were doing. It was like, it's one of the saddest days in world history and the lowest points of the diabolic Christian, the Christian devil coming after the Jew, so that's why I've been a little rough, but maybe it would have been worse. Okay. Anyway, so can you see the board, by the way, on the camera?
Yeah.
You can see the eye and the...
No, you can't.
Oh, no.
Don't move the camera. I moved the board. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
A little bit more.
How's that?
A little bit more.
Rabbi, what was the nail?
There you go.
The nail in the coffin, yeah. So there's a very interesting portion of the Torah. I also recommend this book. Yeah, this is one. My next class actually is just about the authorship of this. It's called Control, and the whole job in this class is to see if it could be that a human being wrote the Torah. Is that possible? That a human being wrote the Torah. So here's what happens. Yeah, man.
Quick question.
I forgot your name.
You were talking about Michael. You said
Anyone here refuse to be filmed? Can I flip the screen? Because the people who watch it love it. Is anyone ditching seminary right now? Yeah, Michael, you're on.
The question I have for you were talking about whether you should be more lenient towards Christians, and I would say, doesn't the Torah require us to be? Because we're supposed to love our neighbors and we're supposed to be the light unto all nations. And then also, like, if you look at really bad travesties, there's certain Christians that made decisions that they weren't supposed to do. They also have the commandment, because they got it from Jews, to love their neighbor. But there's a lot of Christians that fought for us and helped us to get to a point where we're at now. So that's the question I have for you, is that we're supposed to love everyone, and if we want a Messiah to come again, I think we have to be the place of tranquility, especially within Jews, this infighting within Judaism. So.
Okay, so you're pulling out the verse in the Torah, love your neighbor. All right. I think you're voting on me being more mellow with my relationship to Christianity. So, if you don't mind my indulging, I'm not going to address that particular sentence in the Torah of love your neighbor. This isn't the correct forum for that. You might be saying, what? Why can't we discuss that sentence in the Torah? But if you heard the answer, you'd understand why I'm not going to discuss that right now. However, you can ask me in private afterwards all about that sentence in the Torah. And as far as light into the nations, I'm with you 100% on that. That hatred's nowhere to be, no place to go. And hatred's pretty bad. And you know what the Kabbalists say is hatred actually blocks your spiritual path. I mean, you could be like climbing Jacob's ladder, and then your head just kind of hits the ceiling, or it hits like a block. The ladder keeps going, but hatred's where it blocks. Like you can't keep climbing Jacob's ladder with hatred in your heart. And so, which brings up what King David says, that he said, Ohavei Hashem sinu ra. Lovers of God hate evil. Lovers of God hate evil. Meaning, if you say you love God and you're neutral about evil, you know, you're a real millennial, you know, yeah, I'm into God, but like, you know, all that other stuff is cool too, you know. And, you know, you're just like kind of playing both sides of the fence. Not what King David said. King David said, if you're a lover of God, you got to hate evil. Now, you may not have yet distinguished what evil is. So, you know, you got to study a little more. But if something's evil, its hatred is appropriate for it. So, therefore, what I've tried to do is create a paradox here. Because on the one hand, hatred blocks your spiritual path. On the other hand, King David says to hate evil. So what's the obvious answer is to hate the evil without not hating the person perpetrating evil. Hate the evil, not the person.
Still pain.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what King David's saying is don't be neutral about evil. Hate it. Now, God gave us all ability to hate. And I'm sure none of you hate anybody, but God gave you the ability to hate. And if you got that emotion, you're supposed to use it. And what are you supposed to use it for? You're supposed to use it for darkness. You're supposed to hate evil with a consummate hatred. With a consummate hatred. Now, how do you express that? You know how I express it? Shabbos guess. Shabbos guess. You know, I was once walking down the street and I saw a friend of mine, and we're not close friends. When you hear the story, you'll understand why. He's screaming Shabbos at the top of his lungs that the car is driving by. He's screaming Shabbos, kind of like that. He's just like blood-curdling screams in the faces of the drivers driving by in Shabbos. He's just going like, Shabbos! You know, with his hat and, you know, his fur hat and his talis on, and he's on his way back from shul, and he's screaming Shabbos. And then, anyway, the car goes by, and I'm walking with him because I know the guy, and I'm like, you feeling all right, man? And he's I'm kidding, I didn't say that. I know the guy. I've seen him screaming Shabbos a million times, and he, you know what he said to me? He said something to me very beautiful because we walked together many times, and he says to me, you know, I realize you hate that people break Shabbos way more than I do. And I'm like, yeah, how's that? He says, because it's easy to scream. It's another thing to spend your hard-earned money on chicken soup and meat and fish and drinks and craft beer and, you know, and it just keeps coming when you come to my house for Shabbos. And it's like you know, it's easy to scream and then go home to my wife and kids. It's another thing to pack your house with a bunch of strangers and inspire them about Shabbos. We both hate evil. I think I hate evil more. It's also, he's a cobbler. He works in shoes during the week. I spend my life, you know, basically humiliating myself in front of all of you. I mean, when do you get up here and try this? You know, let's get you up here. Come on up here. Your turn. You know, you understand that. And there was a time in my life years ago where I said that if I go any more public than I already am, that I'm sticking my neck out. And when you stick your neck out, you know, there are people called trolls, and those bastards, you know, like with their high and mighty, you know, emails, love to email me, you know, with of course a fake name or no phone number or whatever, and you know, I knew that I was going to be exposing myself to that, and I had to weigh exposure versus having God say, where the hell were you? Why didn't you speak up, Mr. Medavir? Why don't you speak up? Why don't you say something? if you got something to say it, right? And so I remember I was standing in front of a group of people that I was very close with, who I was training at the time, and I said to them, I realize now that the next step is getting really exposed, and exposes me, exposes my wife, exposes my family, exposes us for dating, exposes us for getting kids in schools, and you know, very exposed, and so I had to decide that the difference I could make would be worth exposing myself like that, and it was the best decision I've ever made. But there have been some rough trolls out there, and I've had to deal with some stuff, and and here's the crazy part: is I love them too. I love them too, because I've been in an argument with my wife where I thought for sure I was right, and found out later. I've been in arguments with my wife where I was sure I was right, and I dug in my heels, only to find out I was totally wrong afterwards. I just lacked a little perspective, and once I got the perspective, it was like, you know, I put my tail between my legs.
You're right.
You know, and so I'm sure anyone who's ever had a bone to pick with anyone is coming from some perspective that they think they're doing the world a favor, and I get that. So I actually forgive everybody who you know, all those bastards.
Sorry, it was important.
I'm sure about it. There's a little button that silences the ringer. So anyway, we'll show you that after class.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Anyway, I found in general that forgiveness is the way to go rather than vengefulness, with the exception of Christians, obviously. Just kidding. But forgiveness is the way to go, because think about it: when you don't forgive someone and you're vengeful, all you're doing is promoting their evil ultimately. I mean, that just means someone else is going to get harmed next. Whereas if you can pray for their speedy recovery, you know, like that, pray for their well-being. Like if they were well, they wouldn't have done that. And so maybe that would create more good in the world rather than more evil in the world. Anyway, here's the thing: is Abraham's wife passes away. And are you guys ready for me? Did they finish the previous class? Oh no. Seriously?
Still got 5 minutes.
How do you know? They gave you 5 minutes?
No, it starts at 10 past 4, I think.
10 past 4 I start?
I think. I'm not sure.
Well, okay, we'll let the lady come fetch you.
In the bedroom recording.
What's that? You want to hear a little of my class?
Yeah, I'm listening to it.
Okay. This is my youngest student this week. So, anyway, Abraham remarries, and it says like this. You know, Sarah passes away, and then he remarries, and her name is Incense, and Keturah, and then it says all these names. Now, it lists the names of the descendants, who are all the names of Hindu books. These are all names of Hindu books from thousands of years ago, and including the Veda, and then it says Abraham gave all he had to Isaac, but to the concubine children who were Abraham's. Now, the fact that she's called a concubine when he married her is pretty interesting, but there's a reason why. I'm not going to go into that. But to the concubine children, Abraham gave gifts. What's the obvious question? If he gave all that he had to Isaac, what are the gifts? And we're not going to focus on that either. Sorry. And then he sent them away from Isaac. It was probably Kabbalah. It was probably some kind of Kabbalistic thing about how the worlds work, which is, of course, what the Hindus are all about. And he gave them that. But then it says, then he sent them away from Isaac, his son, which is very interesting, which shows you the line, because they're all his sons. So why does it say? I mean, there's just so many superfluities here. So they sent him away from Isaac. Now, if he sent them away, do I need to know that's away from Isaac? Yes or no?
Yeah.
No.
No, if he sent them away, they're away from Isaac. Abraham and Isaac are a pair. They're a team. And if you follow Isaac's story, he's going to be here in the land of Israel. He sends them away from Isaac, superfluous, his son, superfluous, telling you where the line's going to go. The line of the Abrahamic line is going to really be going Isaac to Jacob. And then it says, while he was still alive. While who was still alive? Abraham. Well, I wasn't thinking that he was sending them away while he was dead. That's why we're talking about the final nail in the coffin. Sent them away from Isaac his son while he was still alive, eastward to the lands of the east. Now that's also weird. Eastward. If it's eastward, the lands of the east. But why does it even mention which direction? And it turns out that the secular scholars of India tell us that Hinduism came in the exact same time of the end of Abraham's life, and it came from west of the Euphrates. And it turns out the highest caste of Hinduism is Abraham, is a Brahmin. This comes from Brahmin. It's Abrahamic, is the closest caste to Abraham. Whatever, we don't have to get into that. The main thing is this, is stay away from Isaac. Stay away from the Jewish line, you Easterners. Stay away from there. And interestingly, you can go to like the far reaches of South America and find the Abrahamic traditions of Christianity coming from Asa when they conquered the Indians of South America. You find churches everywhere. I mean, I've been surfing in Indonesia in the middle of a jungle, in a rainforest, and found a Dutch church, you know, in the middle. Like, our reach is everywhere. But just India, which is like literally a hop, skip, and a jump. You know, you pass all the stands, you're already in India. You know, a couple stands, and then next thing is the Indian, area. There, that's India. And yet there's been no contact. In fact, the Dalai Lama, who is today's current, leader of Tibetan Buddhism, he says that he knows of no history of contact between the Jews and the Indians, besides obviously the Jews that were in India, but other than that, no real contact with the Jewish civilization. Except what happens is the Holocaust happens and everyone leaves Europe behind. There were physical births and stuff. And then what happened was on the 6th, we count 7 weeks till Shavuos, from Pesach to Shavuos is a 7-week count. And on the 6th day of the 6th week was the 6-Day War in 1967. And all these miracles happened. We get back our biblical territory, we get back the Temple Mount. And that begins the Baal Tshuva movement, but it also began the call to India. And that, ready? Okay, excellent. And that was the call to India and began the whole, call to Eastern traditions. You see, even the Beatles went over there, and it was like the whole deal there. And that's when Abraham finally died, meaning when Europe was destroyed, the Abrahamic tradition was that was the final nail in the coffin. And then from then on, Eastern traditions are going to be important in Jewish tradition. Not that I'm studying Eastern traditions or anyone I know is, but not that we study Eastern traditions, but it's just that to find the Jewish and put the Jewish and the Jewish and have them back together is going to require a spirituality that they maintained all the years while we went through hell. And today Jews meditate. Today Jews are, meaning Jews always meditated, but we had a major break, and that break is now being healed, and it's all being healed. You'll notice any Jew who's worth his salt today is a dedicated meditator, and takes himself, and he has a strong eye, and he's a very well developed human being, and is an accomplished self fulfilled and expressed, and I forget the right word I'm looking for, but they're really integrated, very integrated between the two worlds of Jewish and Jewish. Shalom, everybody. Sorry about